welcome back. New year, new me. What's up, Thomas? What's up, dude? Welcome, everybody. This is another episode of the Occult Book Club. We're here. Thomas is queer, and I'll probably edit that out because YouTube is striking people for saying words like that, dude.
You could just throw in like a nice compliment right over the word as you say it.
So what's up, dude? How you been? How was your New Year's? How was your holiday season? When was the last time you and I got together? Well, we got together last night on an episode. The Book of Enoch. But we got together last night on the Patreon for a killer dopamine deep dive. If for the people missing out on the Patreon content, it's top tier. I mean, it's probably better or to par with the stuff that we put out. I mean, and our portfolio speaks for itself.
It's a little bit less structured, but also it's a little bit less censored too.
Yes, absolutely less censored. We do go hard in the paint, harder in the paint than we would publicly, right? Because it's occulted. Ooh, occult circles, secrets. No, I'm serious. But check out the Patreon, patreon.com/101podcast. Paranoid American. If you want to see some conspiratitties, as I call them, check out his Patreon. You'll see not suitable for work art if you're into that type of stuff. So patreon.com/paranoid American, check him out, and make sure to watch us on rockfin.com/the101podcast. And what am I missing? Yeah, Patreon. And thank you for everyone's support. Honestly, there's a lot of very generous listeners who they really go out of their way to support the show. So I want to give a special thank you to those people who are making this a reality and helping us keep the lights on. And here we are. We're going to be breaking down some of the books that we've read this past year and books that we're probably going to be getting into for sure eventually on this show, because this show is like I do it when I want to type of thing, right? Thomas and I hang out, It's like, oh, let's record an Occult Book Club because we actually read the books. We read them, and sometimes it sucks, but we do the hard work for you. We're in the trenches for you. And for those that are here, they understand that. But what's up, Thomas? Talk to me, dude. You're a little bit quiet. What's up, man?
I'm just waiting, man, because I'm actually hype about this one more than any so far. Because instead of just having to cover one particular book and getting into the grime and the details, we can just kind of do like a smattering of, different books that we picked up. I've got a few that I revisited this year because of projects that I was working on that I think that maybe I haven't even mentioned before that I want to suggest. So this will be like a great occult version of Reading Rainbow in a little bit.
We should get an Occult Book Club version of that.
A little I looked into maybe making like a little intro. I haven't had the time to dedicate to it yet, but I would love that. Like a little. The dude that did my Paranoid American theme song,
yes.
Maybe we can get someone to, commission like a parody version of that.
Either that or like some hardcore, grindcore version of it, like Screamo.
With a logo you can't read, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the DMX Reading Rainbow version? Where the guy's like, it's been on social media before. It's like, Reading Rainbow. And then it's a DMX going in. I'll send it to you. Anyways, I'm sure the listeners you're living under a rock. Yeah. Well, and are you wearing an Illuminati eye on your shirt, bro?
It actually says, don't trust anyone.
You're not helping us on the show, dude. People already think that we're occultists and that we're part of the secret societies. And here you are wearing this attire. I'm not a good look for us, Thomas. That's all I'm going to say. All right.
The more we go through all this, I'm starting to think you can pay a fee to whoever you want and get like a little membership card, right? But you're no more in a secret society or in the know of the occult as if you just learn a bunch of shit and just kind of start understanding it, because it really at a certain point it's not between who's got a membership in what and what title and what degree you've hit. It's, can I look at this symbol and decipher it or not? And that's a very binary, like you either can or you can't, regardless of what fancy title or anything else that you kind of put on yourself. So I don't know, that's like, sure, yeah, if you want to think that you're in a secret society or someone else is in it, what really is just the determining factor between those two of like what you know and the context that you can understand things through.
Exactly. And that's why it's hard for me to talk about what I've read, because there are some books I've read in their entirety, and there are numerous articles that I've read in regards to articles and research papers, thesis papers, etc., you name it. And that's why, for me, if I add all that up throughout the entire year, plus all the books, the actual physical books, or even PDF copies of books, which I'm going to get into some of those today, and even physical books too that I have a bunch here. And I'll start it right off too with the one that's really blown my mind as of lately. And I have an interview with him coming out this week. The most recent book that I've read was The Mysteries of the Great Cross of Hendai, Alchemy and the End of Time. And this is Jay Widener with Vincent Bridges. Now, Jay on my interview went hard in the paint. I mean, if I could highlight, and you're the one that actually showed me these little tabs too, bro. I really appreciate that.
You're gonna see a whole bunch of them in all the books that I hold up, yeah.
Because they're amazing.
Dollar store, man. Those dollar store things are the best.
And I bought a bunch, so I'll go in and I haven't done the color coding, but I'll go in and I'll highlight a bunch of them. And dude, this book was so heavy. I told Jay, because I started this book in audio format, and I usually don't do that. But if I'm heavy with work, if I'm heavy on whatever I'm doing, if I got to mow the lawn or do chores around the house or something, I like to be able to cover some ground. I like to be efficient. So I'll pop in an audio book at the same time and I'll take screenshots of the notes, right? I started with this book like that. Didn't work, bro. It's just so heavy. The content.
And you got to like keep stopping and making a note and stopping and making a note. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, there was no way. And I told Jay that. I said, dude, I started this as an audio book, which I usually don't do because of my comprehension as far as the retention of the information. Because there's something about the physical flipping through the pages. My wife makes fun of me because I smell the books. You take a good whiff of it, right? It's got the smell of it. There's something about the experience of flipping through the pages, looking at it, and all this stuff. And that's what happened with this book.
I don't have that same nostalgia. I know a lot of people say that, and some people like the uncut bindings and all this stuff. I just find the physical books hard to work with. I feel bad about marking them up. I wish every book that I had was just a digital copy, except for the one issue of that. Once it's digital, you can't really ever trust the integrity of it unless it's like never touched, online before. And even to the point where you might have a digital version and think, oh, it's just digital, I'll find another copy later, and you lose track of it. And then you try and grab it again, a decade later, all of a sudden you notice like passages missing or like different translations. And I just don't even want to be subjected to the whole Berenstain Mandela effect. So instead, I like having those physical copies of the ones that I refer to the most. But to be honest, I'm like the opposite of a purist. If everything I've got is a PDF, I'm not going to complain too much.
Just know that when the apocalypse hits and the AI takes over, Thomas, you're not going to have access to any of that knowledge.
Well, that's right. Yeah, and when the lights go out and the hurricane hits, once your Kindle battery runs out, you've got nothing to do.
Exactly, and that actually happened to me with a book, and I'm going to pull it up now. I thought I had a complete copy of it, right? I thought I had one, and this is the book. It's called John Dee and the Empire of Angels, Enochian Magic and the Occult Roots of the Modern World by Jason Louv. And I got a lot of questions of what to read as far as references for John Dee. Well, I have currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. On my desktop alone, I have 15... 16,
You'll get
17.
around to them someday, every one of them.
Oh, that's the thing. Here's another one. John Dee, scientist, geographer, astrologer, and secret agent to Elizabeth. This is another reference because I get all the time, where can I read about John Dee? Well, these are some of the books, and I'll post the ones that I remember in the description. But this one in particular, dude, I thought I had a complete PDF version, and I started to read it and everything. That I started going in on it. And if you notice, this is an EPUB, so I had to actually buy a copy of it because the one that I had, bro, I didn't notice it skipped from like chapter 1 to chapter 7 out of nowhere. And here I am, I'm going through it, dude. I'm reading through it. I'm like, because I know the history of John Dee because I've read his actual biography, his original biography from 1909. And I go, damn, this dude's jumping a lot. This guy jumped just a whole bunch. Because this is like another one of the books I'm just adding to the bibliography of my research on John Dee. And I'm like, damn. So whatever, I left it, and then I had a copy on Scribed. So I'm following along on Scribed as I'm looking at on my version, right, my PDF version, and boom, I noticed that it skipped. I'm like, yo, what? It went from like chapter 1 to chapter 6. I didn't even notice. So you have to be very careful when it comes to these sort of, yeah, it's cool and I like it, and I read on my Galaxy
Take
tablet.
up so much room, man. I don't know if you've ever had to move before. Moving books is like one of the worst, especially you look around all your shit and then you're like, man, those 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 boxes are just straight books.
Yeah, no, and I agree. That's the thing. But let me finish this book. So the Great Cross of Hendai, I did an interview with Jay on it. And as soon as I came in, I told him, I said, there's no way that we can cover all the topics that are in this book. That's how heavy and dense this book is. But essentially, it reveals to you it's about Fulcanelli, and it's the gist of it is that the Great Cross of Hendai, which even Hitler, I don't know if we're allowed to say that on air, but Hitler visited this cross, and he allegedly met with a mysterious figure at this cross. And the long story short is that this cross is inscribed with a cipher that is pointing at an upcoming apocalypse and a place that is supposed to be impervious to this apocalypse. So that's the thing. It plays into all these other conspiracies. Last night, you and I were going in on Epstein and Ghislaine and how she had her submarines license. Well, we know that there is a place that's impenetrable. Who else used that word? Well, the Nazis used that word in World War II with Operation High Jump and how they had found an impenetrable fortress for the Fuhrer. So this idea that maybe, and I asked him, I said, dude, do you think it's an actual, because they name a place in Peru of this, that they deciphered. They go hard in the paint, bro. And I go, dude, do you think that it's actually that physical place, or is it some sort of metaphysical? Is there a portal at this place? Right? Is there a portal at this place where you either take ayahuasca or peyote, whatever, some sort of psychedelic while you're at this place, and boom, a portal opens up. And we get into all that, bro. We get into all that on the interview. It's crazy, just mind-blowing. And again, it goes into hardcore into alchemy, hardcore into Fulcanelli, and it's just dense, dude. And this book really just connected a lot of dots for me, and I learned a lot. And this is the latest book that I've read. The book that I am reading right now is by Mike Cleland or Cleland. I don't know how to say his name. The Owls, Synchronicities, because I'm interviewing him this week. The name of the book is The Messengers, Owls, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee. That's the book I'm currently almost done with. It's virtual, but that is what I'm reading at the moment for an interview, because I do like to read people's books like cover to cover before I interview them. I don't like to...
What a champ.
Come on, bro. You got to take, you know what I'm saying? You got to take the whole thing. But this book just like threw me for when I did that. I was like, we got to do 3 or 4 episodes on. And even Jay told me, he's like, this book is actually based off another book that he has. He has another book that he's written a bunch of books. He has another book that this one is based on. And the reason I came across this book was because of homie Romy. He showed me this book, but I had showed him Vincent Bridges, which Vincent Bridges is a whole nother rabbit hole. And I have a couple of books that I read of his too. Angels in the DNA by Vincent Bridges and The Ophanic Revelation. Vincent Bridges was the world leader in Edward Kelly. He was an esotericist in regards to Edward Kelly. And he's the one that goes hard in the paint on Enochian and all this other craziness. But yeah, dude, go ahead and fire one off, because yeah, this book blew my mind.
I've got more than one to fire off. I'll go through them a little bit quicker though, because I've got too many to digest too far.
So another book that I read Fine, I'll cover this one quickly. I'm not going to say
Go.
anything about this book, but another book I read cover to cover. And hopefully nobody's lurking in the comments, if you know what I mean. But another book that I read cover to cover was Genuflect. Tracy Twyman. Now, if you want to look at the homunculus phenomenon or phenomena in a different light.
Well, don't say too much though, because I got my own copy that I'm gonna read for this year. But so don't give me too much.
All right. No, I'm not gonna. No spoilers. No spoilers on this thing. It's just stuff that we've extracted from it. If you want to look at reality, quite literally reality in a different light, read this book. Now, understand it's a story, but you and I last night were talking about how occultists would put stories in these books as a way of getting as a way of getting real life events out into the public limelight without the repercussions. So just keep that in mind.
Well, and not just that too, but once you know how to state something in occult terms, it saves you an entire chapter of writing to just throw that little reference in there, because all the context that it usually requires in order to understand that is it's like a whole other book or a whole other library of material, right? So
which
a lot of those occulted terms, it's not as much. I mean, you know, the definition is kind of up in debate in my mind, because it's occulted only to those ignorant, right? If for those who don't have the eyes to see, it's occulted, but if your eyes can see it, then it's not occulted.
Which is, and I referenced this on an episode coming up. Is
that Mario popping out of the little sewer with getting the star, bro?
It's the star bathing ritual, which again,
yeah, dude.
You got to understand that it's another form of cryptography, right? Where it's alchemical language. It's the language of the birds, as Falconelli said. It's Twilight language, how Michael Hoffman says. It's for the initiated. Now, what I love about this book is that literally every single thing that happens as far as related to the occult and information, you can quite literally look it up, and it's a whole rabbit hole in itself. So Genuflect by Tracy R. Twyman. Also, Baphomet, The Mystery Temple Unveiled, and another book that I read cover to cover, Clock Shavings. Same.
Whoa, we're going to have to blur that to
I'm sorry. Oh, God. Sorry. Let me write that timestamp down. Wow, okay. So, yes.
Like a little wand, like a Nicolas Cage head on top of it.
I'm going to put my head on it. Okay. So, I'm like, my note says tit at 18 minutes in. So, this book, Clock Shavings, again, Tracy Twyman, and he goes hard in the paint. Not gonna spoil it for you.
I'm gonna go through some of the books that I've got coming up that I want to read. Then, since you already started with Genuflect, and I've got that one in front of me. And
look at Thomas. Does this look familiar?
Don't make me disconnect already. Hold on, I got my hands full. It's already thick enough, but I'm looking forward to at least reading through this one because I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
So here, I'll go through some of the other ones that I want to go through early in this year. This one's Alchemically Stoned.
Oh, nice.
By P.D. Newman, and from what I understand, it's basically a breakdown of how Freemasons and maybe early alchemists were using the bark from the acacia tree to extract DMT, and they were using that to sort of understand, you know, these deeper concepts of philosophy. So this one I'm actually really excited to get into.
Didn't you interview that guy too?
Freemasons. What's that?
Didn't you interview him too?
No, I mean, I've only interviewed one person so far, and it was on serotonergic receptors, which I don't have any books on because I can't afford them, but we'll get into those. I got this one too that I'm excited about: The Initiatory Path and Fairy Tales, Alchemical Secrets of Mother Goose, nice. Bernard Roger. And this one just kind of goes hard into the origins of, you know, Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, all the original Germanic and kind of folklore tales that we still repeat, you know, with Disney. because I started a couple different occult Disney podcasts this year, so I've been trying to get as much deep information as I can about the true origins of all the different stories that we kind of get bathed in growing up, right? And later form, Project MK Ultra and Monarch programming. So I felt like I had to understand the original roots of some of that.
Definitely alchemical, 100%.
Yeah, and then I got a couple others here. This is the autobiography by Marina Abramovich. The spirit cooking lady.
Yeah, she's
Walk Through Walls, and I've gotten a few of the chapters through a few different times, but it hasn't really grabbed my interest as much. But I know I'm going to finish it this year, just because I want to get a little bit more insight from the spirit cooking chef herself.
Yeah, that lady's sus, and she's definitely linked to all the elites, and I mean, use your imagination when it comes to that. I'm going to fire this one off. A lot of people ask me, because they know that I talk about Pythagoras a lot, where can I get more information on Pythagoras? Well, Pythagoras never actually wrote anything. All the works that we know of him is through Iamblichus. So this one, Iamblichus, Life of Pythagoras. It's a translation from Thomas Taylor. Thomas.
How long is that one?
This one is not that long. It is only 252 pages, but it's about his entire life, and it just goes in depth on various different things. And there's another one that I have.
You going to read that one, or you read that one?
I've already read that one.
Yeah, worth it?
It's a pain in the ass to read, but I mean, if you want to learn about Pythagoras, then yeah, I mean, it's there. Let's see what else.
I mean, some of the books are like high recommendations. Maybe some aren't. So I guess I'll as we cover ones that I think are worth getting, I'll point those out. Otherwise, take it or leave it.
American Metaphysical Religion, Esoteric and Mystical Tradition of the New World, Ronnie Pontiac. Now, I'm not going to get to read this entire thing by the time I interview him, but this is the guy that studied with Manly P. Hall for 7 years. He was his official lecture substitute in the PRS Society on Sundays, right? He had access to all of Manly P. Hall's books. He wrote bibliographies for him. He was married by Manly P. Hall, and I'm going to be interviewing him. So this is his latest book that just came out this month, American Metaphysical Religion. I've only skimmed through it, and that's all I'm going to have time for, but I've already found some stuff. I mean, I only have one thing marked. And also check out these fucking bookmarks, dog. Paranoid American.
That's sexy.
Look at that right there. Occult Book Club. You can get those if you order a Occultist Monday from the podcast.com. Look at that. Oh. As seen on YouTube. Here we go. So, yeah, I'm going to be interviewing this guy. I haven't gone through it, but I've taken like one note on it. He's like, we'll just cover something that you like in it, and we'll talk about it. This dude is a wealth of information, and when he talks, bro, he reminds me so much of Manly P. Hall because he's got that rhetoric of the...
You just want to start cutting him checks?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just the way he carries himself, the tempo, the pauses, the breath, everything.
But yeah, the rhetoric,
right? So that one, I'm gonna throw this one out as well. It's by George Louis Borges. I was just introduced to this guy, and his work has blown my mind too. But Fixions by George Louis Borges. He was a famous Argentinian author, and this is a collection of various different stories. And here's the content. So I've read a couple of these. I read The Library of Babel. I've read the Aleph isn't on this one, but which other one did I read? The first one, the Tion, Ukbar, Orbis, Tetris, which is like a Illuminati type story about the secret society. And it's just a bunch of different books. Now, he's got a really interesting history because he writes almost like thought experiment. Is that how you say the is it a thought experiment?
Yeah. I immediately think of a modern version of Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson, but like the book's broken up into exactly that, like little thought experiments, and like little things that you put yourself through, and
Yes.
like a change in perspective. And it's like, for the next hour, the next afternoon, go out and pretend you're a fucking rock, or something just like random.
So
but they're all meant to put you in a different mind state.
Yeah. And this was it's only 142 pages, and it's got a chronology there in it as well, but it's at the beginning. But it was translated by. Are you getting feedback on my end?
No, you're good.
It was translated by him and this other guy, but they worked hand in hand because he ended up becoming blind, and he had severe insomnia, and the stuff that he writes is really psychedelic, bro, like crazy. And I'm not gonna spoil any for you because just read. They're short stories. Read the stories, and the reason that he was able to write things like this of these particular concepts was because he had severe insomnia. So he was in this state of, he was in the dream world all at the same time on the living world, the awake world, and he was able to write these crazy stories. So check him out, George Luis Borges Fixions. I want to read his stuff in Spanish because I think that's the way it was meant to be read. But I got this week, a couple days ago. So I just wanted to have a copy of it.
All right, let's see. I got one for something completely different. This is the Ku Klux Klan and Freemasonry in 1920s America.
Why would you bring that up, bro?
So this one is because I was talking with Nate on Reality Czars, and he said that he's got like some familial background with the Klan, I guess, and I've got some knowledge on Freemasonry, and I think between our unique perspectives, there might be some actual connect. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there might actually be a connection though in between these two, because in the early 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan was actually starting to become one of the only all-American and most secret societies outside of Freemasonry, which kind of came from those dirty Europeans. So the Americans were thinking like, well, we want our own American secret society, and that's kind of where a lot of the origin of the Klan sort of originated from. So this book right here is actually based on a thesis paper by some guy that was going for his PhD in this particular topic. But it's such a niche little area, and man, how often do I come across like a Pike reference, right? Someone will be mentioning how Albert Pike worked for the Confederates, and then there'll be some kind of like really racist editorial note from Albert Pike. So there's no question at all that the origins of Scottish Rite and Freemasonry in America were like completely rooted in just the national racism that existed. But I'm really curious on how deep that rabbit hole really goes, because it's a major point of contention that still kind of echoes today. So anyways, highly spicy, I'm sure. But that one I've been looking forward to reading. It's kind of a thin one.
Interesting pick there, Thomas.
Digging up some skeletons, some American skeletons for sure on that one.
I'm gonna throw this one out. I haven't started it. I've only read a few pages of it. The Dark Lord, H.P. Lovecraft, Kenneth Grant, and the Typhonian Tradition in Magic by Peter Levenda.
Nice.
Yeah, I only a few pages in.
A page in.
Yeah,
that's that title page.
A page, yeah, a page. One that I'm
in. It was
in.
the best title page you've seen in a while, I'm sure, though.
One of the ones I'm reading right now, which I'm taking notes, and I'm reading it on my tablet. Another Peter Levenda. I am going to be covering the Merkaba.
Nice. That's a good one.
Stairway to Heaven, Chinese Alchemist, Jewish Kabbalist, and the Art of Spiritual Transformation by Peter Levenda. Very questionable figure, but dude, mind-blowing information in here. I'm like, wow, the entire time. So, interesting read. I would check it out. It's all about the
I've got an OG one. This one's actually not easy to come across a physical copy of anymore. This is, it doesn't even want to focus in on it, but this is Michelle Remembers, which is...
Do you have the little screen? Flip the little screen now and you could tap to...
I don't have it all set up like that.
Oh. Damn, they don't even want us to see.
Michelle Remembers is the book that kind of triggered the Satanic Panic, essentially. Like the whole concept of satanic ritual abuse sort of started with this book here, Michelle Remembers. And then a predecessor to that one is this guy here, So I put my hand in front of it. This is not going well. This is called the Todd phenomenon.
Oh, the book is called The Todd Phenomenon? There you go. There you go. You almost got it, bro. You almost got it.
And the full title, and then this was one that I referred to a few times this year in a couple of different podcasts and research, but the full title is The Todd Phenomenon, Ex-Grand Druid versus the Illuminati, Fact or Fantasy. And he basically claimed that he was raised in a coven of witches that had direct lineage to black nobility and the Bavarian Illuminati, and that he was trained in all the dark arts, and that he kind of like branched off and broke away from them. And this guy actually joins Jack T. Chick in later years of Chick tract pamphlets, and he's the one that informed Jack T. Chick of a whole lot of kind of Illuminati specific and occult, pagan, evil ritual sort of information. A lot of that came from this guy here. So this is like a super classic one too.
When you say black nobility, are we talking about African Americans, or like what is that? What is it? What does black nobility
Black nobility
mean?
was kind of like to oversimplify it, the Bavarian Illuminati was in Austria in the late 1700s. Black nobility refers to a similar concept, but to like the Italian royal sort of merchants of Venice and the area, that also kind of had like a complete stranglehold over geopolitical decisions, just because they were the merchants and they controlled access to trading and ports and natural resources. So the black nobility, at least in that kind of context, is kind of claimed as being one of those like prototypical secret societies that actually runs the world behind the kings that are just kind of the faces of it, at least in modern sort of medieval times,
like the Black Pope type of thing in the background, shadow figures, right? Something like that.
So here, and then to do my due diligence too, this is kind of like a skeptical book on the Satanic Panic, saying that everything that was reported through the Satanic Panic was just an absolute fabrication that was created by psychiatrists and false memory syndrome, and that it was just absolutely a national-wide panic rooted in superstition and almost nothing more than that. Although I don't really agree with that summary. And I mean, I've taken, I've got my notes here, but I've taken a lot of freaking notes in this book in particular, just to kind of cover my bases, because I think some of the claims that I want to make in one of my upcoming books is that the Satanic Panic was rooted at least as far back as the early 1800s. And there was almost no gap at all between the Salem witch trials in the 1980s. It seems like such a far, gap in time, but really there's instances every single decade of someone that's going crazy and going into a panic because they think Satan took over their town or their kid or, entire region. So, so I did that one. And then also Satan in America is very similar, where it just covers like the Satanic Panic, specifically of like the 80s and the 90s. I want to say that almost none of the books that I've covered so far get into the concept of serial killers, which I think has like a huge overlap between Satanic Panic and serial killers. I think they might even be the glue between sort of like the early 1900s and the later 1900s.
Another book that I've read cover to cover, LSD, The Wonder Child, the Golden Age of Psychedelic Research in the 1950s by Thomas Hatsis. He has been on the podcast before. He has not been on for this one, but I did read this book cover to cover a while ago, and it was supposed to be for an interview for that, but then things got complicated. So I started reading through it again a second time, and I haven't gotten through it, but that's also a very good book. It breaks down the entire history of LSD, the development of that from the witch trials and on. So he gets into the witch trials and everything on that book as well. And then another one that I want to point out for references to different things, one that I enjoy, The Great Wizards of Antiquity, The Dawn of Western Magic and Alchemy by this guy Ogilvy. And it's just literally a whole bunch of different people in history that have been talked about as having powers. You have Jabir bin Hayyan in here. You have
No, the homunculus is gonna make himself known no matter what.
You have Zosimos in here.
Yeah,
You
okay.
have Orpheus. You have Paracelsus. You have a whole bunch of different characters in here. And I've only taken it for. You have Pythagoras, of course. You have the
Yeah, and
Pythia.
speaking of Paracelsus, this is the book that introduced me to him a while ago. Right here, you can see I've got the same amount of notes as usual in most of my books. But highly recommended this one. It's not the easiest read in the world for sure.
What's that about, dude? Selected right. Oh, so it's about his different writings, like the Natura Rerum and all that good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. So it basically here's the
All right, cool.
man of the created
Yeah.
world, man
Creation
of
of
his
man.
body. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Another one that I haven't gotten into, but I do want to get into, is The Magic Circle of Rudolph II, Alchemy and Astrology in Renaissance Prague. And now I know a little bit about Rudolph II because, again, I was
Blood relative, right?
blood relative of...
Yeah, you're a blood relative, aren't you?
No. I was doing research on John Dee and Edward Kelly, and obviously they went to Prague to tell Rudolph II that he was demonically possessed and that he needed to turn his ways around, also he was going to die because the angels told him so. So I'm familiar with his story, and he's the one that had the Cabinet of Curiosities because he collected he collected little people because he believed that they were magical. He had an army of little people.
This is Rudolph II.
Rudolph II, yes, and I think Tycho Brahe was in there too. I think he was in that circle as well, which is another. I think were you on that episode that we did on him?
Yeah.
We went hard on that one on the Patreon. So I'm a little bit familiar, but so I want to read this book and get into that. But yeah, just another one of the reading list, of the endless reading list.
All right, here's one that no one's got. I guarantee it, because I bought this one such a long time ago, but until recently, until maybe this year, I started getting more into like world history and branching outside of just being a paranoid American, and now I'm more of like a paranoid global citizen a little bit. But this one right here, called the Veneti, the first builders of the European community, and it's by these guys down here. And just to show you how OG this book is, I got this in like 2006 with a letter directly from the author that was kind of hyping it up. Just trust me. But basically, the concept here is that the book takes the premise that almost everything that we know about modern Western civilization comes from the Greeks and the Germans and the Romans, essentially, but that the Slovenian people and the Slavic people were actually at the heart of the Venetian culture, and to Venice, or like to ancient Rome, Venice was almost like or ancient Italy, Venice was almost like how Carthage was to ancient Phoenicia. So whoever actually was at the heart of the Venetian people and those mercantile traders actually has a lot more impact on worldwide history. And I guess based on this book, the Slovenian people were kind of at the heart of that, but all the credit has since been given to, Italians and Germans and just everyone but the Slavs. So I don't know. I'm excited to read this one because my last name is actually Slovenian, so it comes from this exact region. So I might be a little bit biased in wanting to take a little bit of ownership over Western civilization, or maybe not. Maybe it's a stain on my profile.
So you want to talk about books that nobody has? Well, I guarantee nobody has this book right here. The Ritual of Higher Magic by Piers Morris. And I want you to see the condition that this book's in, because I paid, let's see if it'll zoom in. I paid $250 for this book. Look at that. Look at how the spine is separating. Look at that. Paid $250 for this thing, right?
So it's on you though to like scan that puppy and put it online so someone else can read it, right?
No, I'm not scanning. I'm not scanning shit. But this book, right? And of course, the guy's name is Thomas, the one that had it before me. And what ended up happening was I got this book because of my research on on Pythagorean palaces. And when I stumbled across this book, so I've read various parts of it. It's not very long, but one of the things that I came across, which I thought was really nice, and it's very theosophical, very dualistic, that, you know, there's a magical battle in the higher dimension and how you're able to tap into that.
As there are. Yeah.
Shape of thought forms. It gets deep. It goes deep. But one of the things that I really found fascinating was that the guy that had it took copious notes in this book. And there's like
that's pretty dope.
There's different diagrams like that.
Wait, what is the note? This is fake.
No, so check it out, bro. So he's got Churchill, Hitler, Roosevelt, Stalin, Jojo, and some other guys. So like world leaders of like World War II, I guess, or something. The year that they were born, their age when they died, I guess, years in office.
Birth charts on these dudes, huh?
Bro, he was doing, and they all add up. They all add up to the same number, dude. 3,888 is the number that they all add up to. So he breaks it all down. You see that? He breaks it all down. They all add up to 3888. So again, I don't know what it means, dude. I haven't, because some of the stuff I can't. So it says fake. These sums will always come out the same. These aren't different numbers under each name. They are one number divided differently. Increase one, decrease the other. Sum is the same. And I can't read his cursive handwriting, but he was going hard in the paint, bro, because this book.
I want to read that dude's book.
Yeah. So again, I don't know what sort of which. So it's got here a difference between angel and man, sources of knowledge, occultism, doctrine, man, the battlefield of good and evil. That's chapter 3. And it talks about the use of rituals, the use of masses, what they're supposed to invoke, how they're supposed to be used, dark rituals and their outcomes. So I guess it's like some like darker magic type of stuff. And I'm just gonna read something real quick because I've only done this on like Patreon, like behind paywalls. I've only covered this thing, but I'm gonna read one thing of the and I know it's probably gonna resonate with you, Thomas. The Occult Temple of Freemasonry, okay? And it's got the stages in Masonic ritual. And I've been told that if it's written in a book, it doesn't matter because I can say it. Plus, I'm not in a Freemasonic order. So from what I've understood of you guys that are in these secret societies, you guys can't you can't talk about what's told to you orally, right? Okay, so that's our answer right there. But the stages in Masonic ritual, it got the procession and then opening of the lodge. And he talks about how it would seem that in Freemasonry, the non-human beings summoned by the ritual are those which play in and through the human aura. And thus the atmosphere of a lodge considerably depends on the nature and temperaments of the humans who take part in its working. And it's talking about psychic edifices, the site of the lodge at work, seen by those who claim to possess extended sight. So it's got clairvoyance and all this craziness in here. But point being that this guy has a very interesting history, this Piers Moorish guy. He started out as a infantryman or something like that, and he started writing about occultism. So he's got like a weird history, but yeah, I promise you nobody has this book because it took me forever to find it. And when I didn't know it was this messed up. And I paid $250 for this book. So I'm going to pull out another book that
I think it's worth it based on the notes alone, which might hurt the resale value, but I mean that's
yeah,
that's like 2 books in one, no?
Another book that nobody has, and I've driven the price up by talking about it on different shows. It went from $80 to like $450 at one point, but there you go. Pythagorean Palaces by G.L. Hersey. I do have all his books. I bought all his books because I think that his books are, I'm going to go on a limb and say that they're grimoires. They're written in code because it reads very much like a Pythagorean palace, magic and architecture in the Renaissance era. So it talks about this architecture, how there is occulted scaffolding, how the architect is a magician. I've also read Architect as Magician too for episode 119 for Dr. Golly, I forgot his name. I'm so sorry. I forgot his name, but he wrote the Architect as Magician, and this is what this gets into, that these buildings are used as talismans, but only the initiated are able to see this occulted scaffolding, similar to how in the Ritual of Higher Magic, only certain people are able to see these non-human entities circling inside of these buildings and these inside of these lodges, etc., whatever you want to call it. But there's just weird language in here because it is an architecture book, but it just has, I think it's encoded in some which way. And that's one I promise nobody has. You can try and look it up. It's probably $400 right now. But yeah, Pythagorean palaces, and I've done a whole presentation on that whole concept because I think it goes hard in the paint.
Well, here, speaking of magic, this is one that I was excited about, and it was okay. I'll give it like a 5 out of 10. But this is the Magical Knowledge Trilogy, Foundations, the Initiate Contacts of the Adepts by Joseph E. McCarthy, and it's a pretty thick one. I took a decent amount of notes. But yeah, it was like a little over 700 pages, and it makes some really good sort of like summarized oversimplifications of how magic works, what ritual is. One of the cool takeaways that I got from it was that a ritual is kind of simply repeating the same act over and over, and that each time you do that, I kind of likened it to how Tesla discussed sort of what he called like infinite energy, where you would shoot energy up to the ionosphere and then it would come back and you would reverberate that and send it back with even more force, almost like someone jumping on a trampoline over and over, where you see like all their friends jump each time, like they get down, and each time they get higher and higher because they're transferring their energy and like sending up a little bit higher. So the author kind of describes magic ritual as, in my words, I'm putting this as the analogy of like this energy that just keeps getting stronger. So if a certain ritual happens in a certain place and then someone revisits it thousands of years later, it's not like it just completely ceased to exist. That next time you do it, it's like you're in the middle of that trampoline and you're jumping up and down. So you could actually elevate the power of like a certain kind of magic ritual or any kind of magical thinking once you go into a place where it's already occurred before. Or like that's kind of like the theory of magic rituals. So I thought that was really interesting because it also denotes that it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. If you just go through the same ritual that's been established before you in fact are kind of perpetuating like that impact of energy on that area over and over. So it might go from a religious ritual into a secular ritual into like, oh, that's just the way that, you know, my dad did it and his dad did it, so that's just how we do it. That itself could just be modern day rituals over and over and over again that are kind of repeating like magical processions that meant something. So it was a cool takeaway, but it's probably not worth reading 700 plus pages to get through it all, but it was a nice introduction.
Nice. Yeah. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So absolutely, by harnessing that, and that plays into my research right now of Al-Kindi and the rays of the celestial rays. Another George L. Hersey book that I referenced. I skimmed through it. It's a quick read. Promise nobody has this book either. Artificial Humans, from Pygmalion to the Present, Falling in Love with Statues. And this goes through the entire history of artificial creation from the ancient Egyptians all the way to the modern Prometheus, which is Frankenstein, and a little bit after. And there's the homunculus is covered in here. You have automata. You have a whole bunch of different things in here in regards to how people, it goes into the AI, the primacy of artificial humans. And it's got right here in the second part of Faust, 1832, Goethe, who had read Paracelsus on how to create homunculi. Look at that. Homunculi. Dramatizes the creation of artificial life. Faust assistant Wagner, however you want to say, Wagner, is busy discovering the secret. Then, having finally created a living homunculus in a test tube, he says to Mephistopheles, who enters at this moment, the ancient form of procreation we now declare a pointless joke. If animals still find it fun, man with his high qualities must purify his origin. And that's from Faust. But yeah, it's got the whole history.
Well, and that's nuts too, because in my tracing of satanic panic in America, Faust is like the epicenter of the early 1900s specifically of where Satan enters Hollywood.
Yes.
Because there was a number, and when I say a number, there was like, between 5 at a minimum and 10 at the upper end, between like 1880 and 1900, that all focused on Mephistopheles, Mephisto, and Faust. Which Faust was the guy that makes the deal, and then the devil's represented by Mephistopheles, which is just shortened to Mephisto. But this series of movies by a whole bunch of different directors, including Thomas Edison, by the way, Thomas Alva Edison, inventor of the light bulb, his like the very first introduction of Satan by an American director in America was Thomas Edison. But Faust is essentially that glue that binds, the 1800s and the 1900s with the concept of like this popularized Satan.
Does this one look familiar to you, bro? Come on, dude.
I don't actually have that one.
Come on. Does it look familiar?
I've got no idea what you're
Bro, it's Lumpkin. This is Lumpkin, his pen name, Ann Burton.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's right.
Fifth Estate Publishing Company. That's his publishing company, Alabama.
He dropped the bomb.
He dropped
the bomb.
He dropped the bomb on the show. Go check that book out, the Occult Book Club.
It's a smart idea too to kind of put all your astrology and numerology and a little bit more of the woo-woo into that market.
Definitely,
so much respect.
Definitely woo-woo. I mean, he goes hard in the paint. I've skimmed through it. I haven't read it yet, but he breaks it down, bro. He breaks it down, and it goes hard in the paint. So numerology.
Here. Let's do some more ones that no one's got, I'm sure. So this one's Who Was Jack Ruby, and it was written by we're not allowed to talk about this one, apparently.
Oh, nice.
This one is written by one of the news reporters that was in charge of interviewing JFK and some of he was going to cover just the regular parade before the assassination happened. So he ends up losing his job because he's looking a little bit too close into it. His bosses are like, give this thing up and go cover the cat caught in the tree. And he figures that this backstory of Jack Ruby is actually a little bit more important than that.
You can't say that.
They don't want us to know about it. But yeah, he covers the Warren Commission. He covers J. Edgar Hoover's role, and this one's is directly related, believe it or not, at least the way that I'm reading it, into a series of books on voodoo, because there was some ties between Lee Harvey Oswald, Jack Ruby, and Haiti in sort of a meandering path that we won't get into right now. But this one right here is called Born of Blood and Fire. And this one is basically, here we go, the origins and evolutions and practices of the Haitian rites. And this one kind of covers the origins of a lot of voodoo practices. And there was another set of books here too. I can't remember the name of this one. Oh yeah, this one is Geosophia, the Argo of Magic. This is a 2-set series that goes into ancient Minoan cultures and ancient Greek cultures, and a lot of the magic that gets passed on, I believe, from Phoenicia sort of into those, the different foundation of our current culture.
And I want to point out that we're putting out a lot of books right now. Some of them are references. Some of them are things that I've read cover to cover. But for those that are really interested, and because I get this question a lot, like, oh, what should I read? Where should I get started? This and that. Well, if you want, it depends. If you want to start reading about the occult or any esoteric topic, I would start with The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And then anything from there, if you don't like that, just know that everything else is just esoteric. So what esoteric means is specialized. So anything out of that book, any other form of magic or alchemy or whatever, it's going to be esotericism. So it's going to be specified on the same broad topic, but more specific. So in alchemy, you have Zosimos or you have Paracelsus. Well, it's still alchemy, but you're just going to be in a more specified area of that person or that topic, if that makes sense. So I would start off with that. If you don't like that, then I don't know what to tell you, but I get the question all the time, oh, where should I start? Well, start with that. Get your, just put the tip in. And if you like it, then you keep going. But if you don't, then I don't know what to say. But
you can't be helped if you don't find a single topic in there, because really it covers music, art, mythology, history. So if none of those topics interest you, then there's nothing in it for you. But I would hope that that's not the case.
Yeah, let me pull up here some books that I've read on my tablet.
Here, while you do that, this is one that I was on Tinfoil Hat talking about Occult Disney at first. That was earlier in like February of last year. And a lot of the more salacious details come from this book right here, Walt Disney, Hollywood's Dark Prince, by Mark Elliott. Oh yeah, they don't want me to tell you about this one.
Dark Prince, bro. Every time you mention the Dark Prince,
but it gets pretty deep into sort of his views on Hollywood at the time. The Hollywood industry, sort of his prejudices and racism, but also how the FBI manipulated him because they convinced him that his dad was like had like royal blood in Spain. So it's just kind of interesting because the whole Disney archetype is always about this princess that gets kidnapped from her, royal family and gets forced to work with like evil stepmothers and stepsisters.
Isn't that like an archetype though?
Repeats that. Well, the FBI uses this against him, and they basically tell him that your dad was, a rich royal like Spanish king, and you descend from like this royal bloodline, and that the family you're with now is not your actual dad, and that mean guy that beats you and is mean to you, that's not your real dad. You were kidnapped from, a castle in Spain. I mean, that's an oversimplification of it, but they use this in order to get some leverage, and they say, we'll help you reconnect with your original family bloodline if you help us root out these commies in, the animation world within Hollywood.
Yeah.
So, and that's, the back of this book, this is exactly what they're talking about here. So where it says Walt Disney SAC contact, Los Angeles Field Division. So this ends up being like a primary element of this book here.
Interesting.
Yeah. Highly recommended if you're interested in any of that.
Some other miscellaneous titles: The Secret of the Golden Flower. That's for about the little golden man, homunculus related. I'm in the middle of the glass bead game. I have here, let's see, The Gates of the Necronomicon by Simon. That's also a Peter Levenda book. Promethean Ambitions, Alchemy and the Quest for Perfect Nature. I have the Kabbalion. I have this other book. I'm not going to say the name though, because it's kind of messed up. Might get taken off the tubes. But yeah, we have here Decoding Astronomy and Art and Architecture, because I went on this little like architecture run. The Evolution of Allure by George L. Hersey. The Book of Werewolves. We did the Book of Werewolves. We have The Tree of Life, A Study in Magic by Israel Regardie. Simulacra and Simulation by John Baudrillard. John Dee's 5 Books of Mystery, Original Source of Enochian Magic. So it's John Dee's Magical Journals. We have... Did you read any fictional stuff, bro?
I don't think so. No, man.
No.
Some comic books. I've got a handload of comic books, but none of them are like occult comic books.
My John Dee books that I read: The Life of John Dee, D. and Kelly by Casaubon, The Orphic Revelation, The Private Diary of Dr. John Dee, Deborah E. Harkness, John Dee's Conversations with Angels, Kabbalah, Alchemy, and the End of Nature. We have The Hieroglyphic Monad by John Dee. Don't bother. It's the most obscure piece of writing ever written in the history of ever. It is an alchemical book written in cryptic language, so don't even bother. Damn, Thomas, they're messing with your...
I think my camera was just on too long last night. We were going too hard in the paint and it like overheated or something.
No, you need to put the setting where it doesn't overheat. So I don't know if you put that setting on or not. Do you have that setting on?
I think even that I overheated that setting.
Dang. So we have the Enochian Evocations of Dr. John Dee. A whole bunch of John Dee stuff for a while. The Complete Enochian Dictionary. Cornelius Agrippa, the 3 Books of Occult Philosophy. We have
we're just reading out lists of titles of books now, or what?
books that I got into that some I finished, some I didn't. I'm just
Well, yeah,
going.
I'm gonna limit myself to just 5 more instead of going through just like a nonstop list, fucking. Which I don't know if anyone's even like writing all these down as you go through them. But here,
It's fine. It's fine.
the, this one I reference pretty much the most, especially when Gabe's on and we get into like gematria and numerology. But this I can't ever not pick this one up and refer to it in one of these talks. So this one I'm always going to keep a physical copy of. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Ancient Cosmology and Early Christian Symbolism. And the reason why I like this one so much is because it shows all these dope sort of like geometric patterns and math equations, but it basically resolves the names of all these ancient gods into formulas, and it overlays these formulas. Here's your monad, your favorite, and here it is, kind of like evolving in complexity as you go over time, and you can recognize all these different shapes. And basically, this is just stitching together that the entire Bible is just encoded formulas, like mathematical formulas that are describing the stories of how to like replicate and how to, it's basically alchemy. And this kind of acts as a little bit of a guide on how to decipher some of that.
Damn, bro. They said shut the fuck up. So books that we read this was that this year, the Anesthetic Revelation, the Gist of Philosophy. Was that this year that we read that?
Yeah, that was earlier this year.
We have that one. We have The Initiate to the Flame. We have The Occult Anatomy of Man. These are just miscellaneous books I've read here and there, and a ton of the Moonwalking with Einstein too. For those that want to learn about the mind palaces, that's also a really good book. Illuminatus Volume 1, The Eye of the Pyramid. Got a whole bunch of different books. Transcendental Magic by Eliphas Levi. Prometheus Rising. All these stuff. Sex and Rockets and the Occult World of. That's the Jack Parsons book. If you want to learn about Jack Parsons, I did an episode on him. Yeah, a whole bunch of books. David Icke, The Perception Deception. I started that one, haven't gotten through it.
I actually read a few David Icke books this year, trying to get to the origin of specifically how adrenochrome relates to the reptilians, in his opinion. So that was interesting because I mean I've watched a lot of his videos over the last 10 plus years, but I hadn't read a lot of his material in his own words.
The Damned, bro. Remember that book? La Blas. That was the one about the witchcraft and all that stuff. Folk and the Mystery of the Cathedrals. And yeah, I just have a whole bunch of books here that I've read. And I think for this year, I want to focus on... We have one title that we're going to do on the next episode of this, and then another title after that. So we have 2 books already that we are focusing on as far as...
Don't leak the name of that yet.
We can't, because nobody's talked about it.
No one knows about this one.
We'll be the first one to talk about it. So yeah, it's going to be fun. And I think that's pretty much it. I have so many books in here, I just can't go through them all. But yeah,
I've got 2 more, and honestly, these are probably books only I care about. But this one is Psychiatry and the CIA: Victims of Mind Control, which has by Harvey Weinstein, MD. And this just has some clinical accounts of all of the different studies that MK Ultra actually funded and helped facilitate between the 1960s and 70s. Not the fun like remote control of animals and doing all of like the Ewan Cameron repetition programming. Although that's in here, but it also goes into some of like the more mundane ones where people just got sick and got cancer and died. And there's just so many examples of it and all the different lawsuits. So this was actually instrumental in my MK Ultra pamphlet. Nice. And a lot of like the historical, like actually like fact-based information came from this one. And then it also, I wish I had the cover to this one. I don't know if you can pull up the cover to the Mind Manipulators. It's the coolest looking cover, but I don't have the jacket for it. But Mind Manipulators is a very similar thing. It's a book that covers the actual studies behind MK Ultra. And yeah, the cover almost looks like a Frankenstein mixed with an alien. It's really weird. It reminds me of the movie The Lost Planet a little bit.
You said the mind controllers?
Mind Manipulators. Let's see what year this is.
It's got like
It was signed by the author.
like a dude on the front of it.
Worth. Yeah.
$134, bro.
Yeah, and honestly, you were saying before books that you bought that shot up. Yeah, that's the dust cover that I haven't been able to find yet. But I also found that this book here called Electromagnetic Mind Control, Fact or Fiction. It's the tiniest little book. I mean, I think it's like 40 to 70 pages max. And this one now is like over $200 on Amazon, I think. And it's all like marked up. I've got my notes all throughout it. But this one actually became relevant a few times in a different podcast we did this year. So, and I guess I'm running the show now. So we're going to start going into, oh, okay. Never mind.
So yeah, I the rest of the books that I have are PDF. I'm going to point out some.
We were about to go triple X, but you came back in. So
I'm going to point out some fictional books that I enjoyed. The Hyperion Cantos.
fictional.
I've only read the first one by Dan Simmons, Hyperion. It's a sci-fi. I like sci-fi, bro. It's 4 different books, and I don't know if it's like the Dungeons and Dragons nerd in me that likes this sort of sci-fi, alien, other worlds type of thing. But yeah, that one's a good one, Hyperion.
I gotta say, man, I struggle with fiction because once I get a couple hours into it, I can't get rid of this thought that just starts creeping in the back of my head. That's like, you could have been using this time to learn about something real. Dude. And I know that, and I don't want to feel like gatekeeping between like nonfiction and fiction and real and not real, because we're all describing the human experience at a certain point. But also I look over at, like, for example, I look over at a book this fucking big that could knock you out about Aleister Crowley in America. And just, it's like almost 1,000 pages on just his adventures through America. And once I get an hour into a movie or 2 hours into a fiction book, I can't stop thinking about all these other books that I feel, like has a historical perspective. And I guess what makes that sort of thing interesting to me is that you could just walk, I mean, I guess at a really boring party, but you could go into a party and actually talk about historical people or find like a community talking about historical people. Just like you can find a community that'll talk about fan fiction and Harry Potter and, Tolkien all day. But for whatever reason, that latter just doesn't hold my interest anywhere near as much as talking about alchemy and homunculi and, other just kind of like things that might entirely be fictional, but there's historical accounts of them.
I thought I was the only one that experienced that. This is another really good book too. I read this year, A True Tale of Mathematics, Mysticism, and the Quest to Understand the Universe, Descartes' Secret Notebook. Very, very, I couldn't put this book down.
Sounds like it was written directly for you.
Yeah, I could not put this book down as soon as I picked it up. It's that crazy. It goes through the life of Descartes, and then at the end of his life, he had left this cryptic notebook that Leibniz, the guy who invented binary code, came all the way from somewhere else to find it and decode it, and supposedly he decoded it, and they talk about it in the book. So check that out. Really cool. And because
what's your take on Descartes?
As far as
let's start. Was he a real person?
Yeah.
So he wasn't an amalgamation of different people. No. It was an actual one single person.
I think it was a real person.
Okay. Did he come up with these ideas either through his own like self-revelations and his own studies, or were they passed directly to him from some other order or some, ancient society? Or
yeah, I think that's the part, because the origins that they talk about in any of his biographies or any of the artificial, it is artificial history, but the official history is bullshit. The idea that he came up with the Cartesian coordinate system, laying in his bed because he liked to sleep in, laying in his bed, he wanted to tell where that fly was on the wall. It's X3 5Y, whatever. That's a load of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, one of the most profound discoveries of his lifetime, and that is still being used even today, because the Cartesian coordinate system is at the core of literally everything. Any 3D modeling program, any analytical geometry, any mathematical system. This this system that he created is at the core of that.
So where did you think it came from?
I don't want to say some sort of divine inspiration, but some divine inspiration. I think a lot of the ideas that we attribute today, and that's why I say that seance is just another form of magic. And I think that with this whole thing that I've been talking about as of lately, where I've been talking about like this mind virus that's taking over everybody. And I talked about it last night briefly, where I came across this movie that literally has covered almost every single topic that I've ever covered on my podcast. Me thinking that I'm original. Well, what if we're all being orchestrated and we're all being led to the same area? And maybe that little voice in your head that you have that go, hey, you could have used this time to study XYZ. I have that little voice too in the back of my head, bro. Exactly.
And then you're like, shut up, Nick Cage is on the screen.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I always think about that too. And that's why, but at the same time, it's like, don't get too lost in the sauce. I forgot who told me. I think it was Nick Hinton. He said, don't be busy reading too many books and forget to write your own. Right? Because like we get lost in the sauce when it comes to all this shit. And at the same time, what are we doing with all this knowledge?
Maybe, but I also, like, let's say you write that book and then you read another, couple years worth of material. All that material would completely change your perspective on what you just wrote. It gives you more context. So there's like this catch-22 of like, when do you stop learning long enough to teach? Because as soon as you start learning again, you realize that whatever you thought you knew was, like you're an even bigger idiot than you started as.
No, and I
so
get
I don't know.
that.
I don't know if everyone needs to write a book, but I definitely do, and I want you to buy all my books that I put out, and including here's the big one of last year.
Nice.
This is the Modern American Lovecraft coloring book, and it actually starts out with a nice little Lovecraftian sort of short story in the title pages here, but then it gets into some pretty badass Lovecraftian shots here. Here we go.
And
Snake God.
Let's plug it, bro. Let's plug so we do have a Kickstarter coming up for issue 2. We're not going to launch it until we have a bunch of people signed up for the Kickstarter. We'll put the link in the description. And also, we're going to be coming out with a homunculus pamphlet very soon, a Paranoid American style. If you haven't checked out his MK Ultra pamphlet, I don't know if you want to pull that up, Thomas, if you have one there. With the MK,
I don't have one on me.
The MK, hold on, I'll flash mine. We have the MK Ultra pamphlet here. We're going to be doing one just like this with the entire history of the homunculus, like this, with the entire history of the homunculus. So that'll be out soon, and the artist is already working on it. So
yeah, it's in the works as of this weekend.
Yeah, once that gets out, that'll be out as well. So keep an eye out for that. I'll plug it on the social media. Make sure to follow me on social media at the Juan Podcast on Instagram. Instagram is my main jam. I'm on there always. You can hit me up on there. I'll write back to you if you're not a creep. But yeah, follow me on there to keep up with the show. I post a lot of things, new episodes, whatever it may be. And also
free stickers for dick pics is what I heard.
No free stickers for dick pics. No. So yeah, follow me on there. And then Thomas has at Paranoid American on Instagram.
Same
as well.
thing. Instagram is the only social media that I tend to pay attention to, at Paranoid American. And you can find all the books. And actually, I was even considering about maybe opening up like a used occult book section of my site to just start putting all the books that I've read that other people might want to have access to and not have to buy them off Amazon or eBay or something. So maybe I'll throw that idea around later this year too.
Yeah, I was looking at buying a book scanner, but it's just too many things, dude. Too many things at the same time. Not enough time. I eventually want to do this for a living. If I could just create content and research for a living, I think that'd be awesome. But hey, who knows? I mean, I'm manifesting it currently. I really appreciate all the people on Patreon that support the show, and the people who support the show extracurricularly, that send in donations through PayPal, Cashapp, whatever it may be. I really, really, truly appreciate that. And a lot of people are super generous, like a little bit too generous, where I'm just like, all right, it's kind of creepy. But hey, I'm here for it. I love you guys. And yeah, Thomas, you want to plug anything else? We'll put what I'm probably going to do is a lot of these books that you're able to get. I'm probably going to do this program where you can go on there, click the link, buy the book, and we get a kickback for it. So I'll maybe not, who cares? I'll have time to make the list. But you want to plug anything else, Thomas, before we get out of here?
That's it, man. We've got plenty coming up. And we were talking about Rene Descartes. We're gonna go hard into him, and I think I can either change your mind or add to it that he wasn't tapping into the magical world, but he was tapping into like a psychedelic world.
I
or
know
maybe it's
what
the same thing.
There you go. I know where you're going, bro. And I told you to shut up one time about it because that's how hard in the paint that it deserves. It deserves its own episode of how hard in the paint Thomas was going to go. And I don't think people understand how hard this episode is.
We almost need like a documentary about this one because it was like a full tracing through history and having to search old newspapers and magazines and archives. I had to spend good hard-earned money on institutional newspapers that I vehemently am morally opposed to, but they've got my money now because I needed access to their old ass archives of papers.
That's how they get you. That's the Faustian pack right there, bro. What are you willing to give up for this knowledge?
I think it was $4.99. I think I gave up $4.99
All
week. No, a month.
That's not
month.
It's not that bad.
I think they've gotten at least $12 out of me at this point, though.
So just stay tuned for that. We'll cover that as quickly as humanly as possible, if that's even how you say it. And yeah, dude, this was fun. For those interested in these books, check them out. It's a lot of material to cover, a lot of things to talk about, and we're here for it. So cheers to what's going to be another great year. 2023, I think, is going to really be big, dude. It's going to be.
It can only go up. It's only going to get better from here.
It's only going to get better from here, and it's thanks to those that are listening, that are watching in right now. Really appreciate you. Thanks so much. And I'll catch you guys on the other side.